Okay. All right. Okay. பரவாயில்ல நல்லா நீங்க இதெல்லாம் பதிவு பண்ணி வச்சிருக்கீங்களா?
Yeah, others, please keep your microphone mute so that we can have chances to talk.
Balaji, let us know when we are live.
Sir, we are live, sir. We can.
Oh, okay. I was just waiting. Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is great to have you all for our first live session. Shyam, may I request you to please turn off the share screen for a second while we address everyone. Thank you. Okay, so good evening, everyone. This is great to catch up on the first ever live session for this semester. It's great to be back with all the learners from our design thinking course. This is going to be very exciting because this is our, I don't know, I think 7th time. And also there are some changes, some exciting changes in the course for, at least from our perspective. We have switched to a 3 session. So we'll have 3 live sessions in all. And these live sessions are meant as a means to reach out to you synchronously, because this is entirely offline. At your pace, you do the course. But if you have any questions and you want our immediate attention on it, this is a great place to bring those up. Any difficulties you have with the course or with the content, your thoughts, suggestions, questions, anything, you can bring it up and we'll be happy to address that. I'm of course supported by the entire NPTEL team who is taking care of the whole thing so that we can focus on interacting with you and getting your doubts cleared for this design thinking. As well as we have our own team of comprising of which I call the transition phase of Siddharth, who has been our teaching assistant for the last almost 3 years now, 3 and counting. And we are transitioning over to Sukrat and Shyam. So that's the big handover this time. But anyway, the focus is going to be on you and what you want to learn in what you want to know about design thinking, more than what we've already covered in the design thinking forums, the questions that have been coming on the forums, as well as comments that you mentioned, or the questions that when we circulated the forms, we got a few questions. So we're going to be doing that. Okay. Of course, we'll also address and you who are on this Zoom session who ask us questions. And if you're watching this on YouTube as a recording, feel free to use the discussion forum back again saying, okay, I heard you, but my question was this, and you can still go on and post it on the discussion forum. Okay. So with that, we can start off with our very, very quick round of introductions from our team here. Say hello, Siddharth, Shyam, and Sukrat, to our people, learners here.
Hello.
Hi guys. I hope you have a wonderful live session. Feel free to put in all your doubts and queries here in the chat box, or possibly in the last 15-20 minutes, if you can turn off your mics and ask questions, is also something we very actively would like to recommend. Please make this a session as interactive as possible. I'm sure Sukrat and Shyam have prepared a set of questions which we would like to sort of ask Professor Bala, and sir, the professor will be answering those questions for us. And with this, over to you, Bala sir.
Okay, so say hi, Sukrat.
Hello all, I'm Suprat. It's a weird name, I understand, but I'll be here for the rest of the session, and I'll be assisting Bala sir along with me, Sham, with Siddharth sir's mentorship. So it's going to be good. I promise you that. It's a fun subject to study altogether, to do things that are somehow taught and expected out of you. So all the best.
Okay, thank you, Sukrat. Sham.
Hello all, I'm Shah. I would be the teaching assistant for this design thinking a primer course on NPTEL. Hope to see you in the session on answer all your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, folks. Okay, so without much further ado, we'd like to start off with. So this is how it's going to be. So like Siddharth described it, it's going to be a Q&A kind of a session where we will try to. I will attempt to answer your questions. If you're, if you still have the question remaining, of course you can, bombard me again with the questions or use the forum if the time's out. We have about an hour. Okay. Yes, Sham, your presentation now. We have that so that it will serve as a guide for us. Okay, this is a little bit about us, and yeah, you can look at it in detail. It's there on the course page anyway. Sukrat and Sham have joined IIT Madras and will be assisting this course, smoothly transitioning from Siddharth, who's done an excellent work all through these years in the creation of the course, as well as maintaining this course, answering your queries at all. I don't know how Siddharth manages it. I felt that he was doing a role of so many TAs put together. So I never felt that. So now
Thank you very much. I knew I had to interrupt you. Thank you for all your kind words, Bala. It was all your great
good. Okay, so and we are Sukrat and Sham just to introduce.
And definitely we have to sort of applaud Sukrat and Sham a lot for the efforts they have been putting in over the last few months for the even during the transition and how they've smoothly sort of evolved into the role. And
got it. Thanks, Siddharth.
yeah.
Okie doke. Yeah. So yes, this is the textbook that we'll be following. This sort of it has stories in it. It has cases in it, as well as some activities. You can find them on Amazon as paperback, as well as if you have own a Kindle, you can also find that on Amazon, and of course on Flipkart and Poti, and there's another website called halfpricebooks.in. So it's all available. Majority of the content and much more is there in the book. Of course, if you have any feedback on the book itself, and if you feel that you got benefited out of it, let us know. If you feel that there is something missing, please let us know. Either ways, I would be happy to sort of include that in the next edition of the book. This is as any design thinking project goes, this is a work in progress. We would like to keep improving this. So that's something that we wanted to cover. So this is the prescribed book, and we'll be following that. Okay. If there are any questions you would like to ask us, feel free to unmute and ask us. Best practice that we've been following is to raise your hand. There's a raise hand button somewhere under the reactions button. If you click on that, I will be happy to take your questions. Thank you so much. Okay. So next slide, please, Shyam. Yeah. Okay. So first question that came from our forms is 4 noble truths of Buddha and 4 steps of design thinking. Drawing a parallel. 1-to-1 comparison will give wrong signal to learner about teaching of Buddha. Kindly comment. Okay. So one big disclaimer. I am not an expert on Buddhism. Neither do I practice any of the teachings as given as in the Buddhist text. My attempt at drawing a parallel was to tell you that this is not just in the last 60-70 years the whole philosophy of design thinking, the methodology of design thinking has been around. but a lot longer than that, and it's probably closer to human thinking than we can think of. We think of, oh, IDEO, Stanford, they've come out with these steps, but has anybody else done this? So that was the question that I had when I started out. When I looked around, I found a parallel. I am in no position or in no qualification to even talk about the teachings of Buddha and tell you how it is to be practiced. Not at all. This is an attempt to merely take some inspiration out of those teachings and see how it applies to the product and the service universe in an organization, in a company, in an academic organization, and see how it actually applies. How can we learn about things that we should improve on? Where do we focus on? What's the next step after this? This is the idea behind that. So that's the idea of drawing a parallel, not to send wrong signals or not to comment on teachings of Buddha and how we should internalize it. No, not at all. I totally stand out of that because I'm completely, when it comes to teachings of Buddha, I'm not, I have bare enough that I understand how it is related to design thinking. That's it. Okay. So to reiterate, of course, design thinking has 4 major steps. That's what the learner here is referring to. Empathize, analyze, solve, and test. And that's how the course is also divided. Week 1 is focused on empathize. Second one is on analyze, solve, and test. Now you can use various thinking tools to apply for each of these steps yourself. So you don't have to stick to the ones that we have said. Customer journey mapping for me was a very easy to use tool. So I've suggested that. But if you think there's some other method, I don't know, some other map, empathy map, or some other map which can clearly highlight to you what and help you in empathize, by all means, go ahead and do that. We are not stuck to these, but it helps us, this process of putting it into 4 steps like this, and making sure that we are focused on the job to be done, which is helping out the user in their hour of need. That's the idea, the key core message in this. Okay. And the teachings of Buddha is an interest creator to help you go and look at some of the texts that are mentioned. You can find lots of parallels with other texts also. Some of my students have told me that they found a parallel in other teachings as well. So you should also go and look at it and see if there are other methodologies, other ways in which we can also look at this. Okay, so that is my trial to answer. I have a namesake who is raising his hand. Yes, Mr. Bala, you're.
Yeah.
Yes,
good evening,
please.
Prof. Good evening, Prof.
Good evening.
I just thought that the entire concept of design thinking itself seems to be very intuitive.
Okay.
And while they've given a structure and a framework to analyze, and it seems to be a little bit more, what I would like to say is that very intuitive is the point I just want to drive. Maybe that's the reason why we can go back and look at the teachings of Buddha or any of the others as well.
Sure.
And one of the important things, maybe what catches on or what has better resonance is that the empathy part.
Yeah.
And then the empathy part brings about a lot of orientation in the minds of people when they need to look for a solution to any particular problem. So I just wanted to share that thought.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a very good point. It should become second nature or intuitive. So when you mention intuitive, we shouldn't have to think about what the steps are, but it should come as we do it. And apparently it turns out to be like that. If it has transcended 2,500 years, my thinking is that probably a way of life for us humans to think of when we're thinking about helping somebody else. This is probably how we do it. A good study would probably be study how children help each other out. So because they have no knowledge of the methodologies that adults follow, we should probably track and see how children do it. That's a great thought. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yes, now we have the next question, which is empathy, analysis, solve, and test. EAST is the basic things I understood from the online class. Is there any flow chart available with examples for the design thinking? Okay. Flow chart. Okay. So for me, I think in my book I have a. Let me see if I can find the exact graphic. We have a graphic which talks about um, uh, 4 of these stages, and let me see if I can pull it out. But if I don't find it, I will definitely point you to that direction. The flowchart is very simple. Actually, it's not. Flowchart is usually required when there are lots of steps and decisions to be taken at each step, and see if we have to go left or right. If this happens, then we go this way. In this method, it's you do your empathy exercise in the EAST method, and you get something called the how might we's. Okay, we have not covered that step in detail in our course, but how might we is a question that comes out, say, how might we solve this problem for our user or our customer? So that's the basic question that comes at the end of empathize. Okay, now once we do that, we start to not take that at face value, but we go deeper and find out if there is something else we can think of. Is there a question? Okay, no, apparently not. Okay, so in analysis, we go deeper and try to find out what is unsaid and what is hidden or latent, as we call it. That need can be unearthed by using certain tools, right? So to me, that's the logical next step. So we don't take whatever the user says or we observe in our interviews or observation, but we go ahead and think about it further and analyze it. Okay, and I'm saying you don't merely do it from the customer perspective or user perspective alone. Look at your side also. If you're a manufacturer or a service provider, can you look at your own perspective also? Sometimes it's in the same direction as the customer or user. Good for you. Proceed to the solve. Else, think about what is it that you want and what does the user want. Are they in collision with each other? And that's what serves as the basis for conflict of interest. Or if there are other players, you can also see if they can they actually give rise to certain conflicts. There are no conflicts, absolutely no problem. Go ahead with solve, because you have a problem to solve. Go ahead to solve. If not, think about what the exact problem to solve is. Once you figure that out, go into solve. Okay, so this is your logical linear sort of flow chart. Then you head into solve, think of ideas on your own, empty your teapot, empty your teacup, whatever. So that's what I talk about. Do that first, and then you can even use a methodology called TRIZ, where you can trigger and get a lot of ideas. Okay, solve step is to generate as many ideas as you want, as much as you want, and this is about expanding your mind, expanding the horizons, not just merely take what is possible, but also go beyond that. That's in solve. Finally, we converge again and say, hey, now that I've opened up, can I now make some quick prototypes, quick things to make? That's what happens in test, right? The first part of test, at least, you try to see if you can make something out of it, make some with boxes, strings, or whatever. That's what you will see in week 4, and that leads us. If at any stage you are not happy with the previous one, or you've learned something new, and you want to see, oh, do you want to analyze? Go ahead and do that analysis, even if you're in solve. So there's no strict order. Also, they are just loosely bound one after another. So although I've said EAST in that order, it doesn't have to go necessarily in that order either. Sometimes, but the recommended order is EAST. Okay, I highly recommend that you do it once, you see how things work out, you learn more about yourself, about the users, make a difference, and then tinker around with the order and see that. So to me, there's no real flow chart per se. There are no decisions to be made on a big. It's sort of a guideline more than a strict. From step 1 you do this, step 2 you do this, step 3 you do this. Not an algorithm per se. It's a guideline. Okay, so that's why we don't have a flow chart. Okay, a long-winded explanation for a simple question like that. Thank you so much for the question, whoever the person was. Okay, we move on to the next question. Thank you, Sham. How can we solve a problem if our problem is overlooked by the management? Okay. So Mr. Sendil Kumar is the one who asked that previous question, I guess. Okay, thank you. If you're not clear, if I've not answered your question, if you want to ask a sub question, please by all means turn on your mic and ask me. No worries at all. Do you want to do it right now? Please do so. Yes.
Yes, sir. Thanks for this live update, sir. Live session. Actually, that what the question was in mind, you have answered very well. I just wanted to ask this, for example, empathy. Is there any steps in finding out the problems in the empathy? And likewise, analysis, is there any fixed steps? So those things I wanted to ask you, but as you answered, there is no strict guidelines. It is to be seen. It can be modified to our requirements and based on the problems and other things. So your answers satisfied my questions in mind, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks. All right. So the third question is, how can we solve a problem if our problem is overlooked by the management? Okay. So my there's a tiny bird right sitting next to me. Okay. So overlooked by the management is, I guess you're saying that people know about this problem. People are aware of this problem, but they say it's not important enough for us to solve. Okay. So that's probably why they are overlooking it. That could be one of the reasons. Another reason could be that people don't have the resources to even look at this, because this is too big a problem that is way beyond them. Okay, all this can be caught in your analysis part. So in your analysis, particularly when you're doing your conflict of interest, you can bring this up. You can bring this up saying, my management doesn't have the resources to look at this problem in its seriousness. It requires a lot of seriousness to look at this problem, but they don't have the resources, people, time, information, material, energy, space, any of these. None of these I have, and now I want to solve this problem. There are many clever ways to solve this problem at all. Okay, so even if you think, so look at it. So now is your chance to empathize with your management also, right? So if we looked at the student, let's say you're an academic organization, students is one part of it, and your management, people who govern the decisions are one side of it. You can empathize with both of these people and bring together where they are conflicting, and that's actually a golden opportunity for you to see, how do I solve this deadlock? In fact, you can see the conflict of interest tool work very, very well. And this is reality, right? So in reality, management wants no resources to be spent, but wants to satisfy their customer or user. They don't have 5 days to give for placement, let's say, in a college environment, but we have 25 companies, and they all have to be allocated in 3 days' time. How are they going to do that? Right? So that's a deadlock. But the companies want 5 days. The management can only give 3 days. So how do you solve that? Right? Or they've just overlooked it, saying, companies, guys, you just finish it with 3 days. You will only get 2 hours per company, and you manage it. That's a compromise. But you, as a design thinker, have this tool called analysis. Right? Go with the conflict, of interest tool, and see from both perspectives, and see what the problem really is. Get to the bottom of it. Why is management only giving them 3 days when they should be giving them 5 days? Why does the company want 5 days instead of the 3 days? Look at both sides, get the problem, absolutely crystal clear, analysis of it. And then the solution becomes much more easier, because you know what the problem really is. But if instead we say, just jump to the solution right away, like how Curio tried to attempt to do it, it's not going to work. Right? The first solution that comes to your head, if you get onto the solution, that's not going to work. Right? So analyze it. That's where the key is. People who come up with good solutions have a great handle on the problem itself. They spend a lot of time trying to analyze the problem. So here's your golden chance, people who are asked this question, to go ahead and look at this problem from both sides, the user or the customer, as well as the management. There is a reason, probably a reason why they've overlooked it. Okay, so that's my trial to answer this. Again, if this question, if my response does not satisfy what you're looking at, or you're asking me something else, please feel free to, if you're here in this audience, in the Zoom call, please unmute and ask me. Else, post it on the forum, and I'll be happy to, respond to this question there. Okay, thanks, Shyam. Is there another question? Oh, there's somebody in the chat, I think. Shyam, do you have another question? Oh, okay. So, Mr. Rakesh, just hang on for a few more minutes. I'll finish this responding to this question, and then be back with to your question. Okay, the question is, what is element, name, and value? Okay, there is a method that I talk about in the conflict of interest called element, name, value. It's a mysteriously named tool. I think we've responded to it on the forum. However, this does require some thinking. Element, so let's take the context here. It's the conflict of interest. So we are trying to find out the conflict between two situations. It could be two human beings, or a human being and a machine. Okay, these are the two types of conflicts that can happen. Two humans, or a human and a machine. Okay, so with that, the first question to ask in this element is, where is the problem, right? So where really is the problem? Is it at the it could be a where in terms of the location. Say, if it's on a machine, it's a particular button, it's a particular moment in time, or what one human being wants, where with the respect to another human being wants, right? It could be that. So where is the problem? Identify where is the problem. Okay, that is the element. The element of the problem is, where is the problem. Okay, name tells you what is the name of the variable that we have, that in our control we can vary. Okay, so for example, in the video I talk about the teacher has speed of teaching. That's her variable. She can go faster or slower. Okay, that's in her control. She can go really fast and finish off the syllabus, or go really slow and take the time to explain to each and every child, including the distracted one, right? So that's a thing that the teacher can do. So that's the name of the variable. That is, name is where the name of the variable that the where the problem is, that person can vary, or we as a design thinker are allowed to vary in a system. Okay, value is, what is the value of the variable that it can take, right? Is it teaching is fast, or teaching is slow? Okay, am I allowed to use the measuring tape, or am I not allowed to use the measuring tape? So these are two values. It could be a boolean. Okay, I don't know. Are you able to hear me fine, Shyam and Sukrat?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because somebody says audio is disturbing. Okay, so name of the variable is n. That is, what is the problem, and what are the values of the problem? That is the value, E and V, right? So the value is it going too fast? Is it going too slow? Is it white? Is it black? Is it too high? Is it too low? What can I vary? Okay, if I take my plane too high, I can get lots of details when I want to take a picture of an area. Okay, but the smaller details go missing. But if I bring the plane down so that I can take a picture, I can get high resolution picture of the areas. However, I will have to do many of these. So to have to go slowly on a plane to take all the pictures of a city. If I'm taking like a satellite map, right? An aerial map. So those are the values. Okay. So that tells us, and then you form the consequences, the negative consequence, the positive consequence, and what do we really want. Okay. And we usually take in the values two extremes. Why do we take only two extremes and not somewhere in between? Because our human mind can only handle two things at the same time. It's very difficult if there are too many. We get confused and we're not able to solve a problem. We don't know what the exact problem is so that you can take the solution. So we stick to the extremes so that the problem becomes very, very evident to us. Oh, it's high versus low problem, or fast versus slow problem, or is it using the measuring tape or not is a problem. Okay, we really get to know what the exact problem is, and that's the core of this element name value method, that the model that you see. Okay, the model can also be referred to, I mean, if you want to write it in plain English, you can also use if, then, and but. If, then, but. If I vary this, then this happens, but that also happens. The negative also happens. That's another way to frame the same thing. Okay, it's what we're trying to do is, what is the consequence of doing it? Any idea, no solution is perfect. We are trying to find out what is the problem with a particular solution. You can do this even after you've come up with an idea. If you've given an idea and you think, oh, this idea is amazing idea, it'll solve the problem immediately. Apparently not. No solution is perfect. Try to find out, if I implement this solution, what are problems I'm creating. You will then put it in the form of a conflict and see, if this happens, this happens. If this happens, that happens. So you try to see in the ENV model. Okay, so that's my trial to tell you what ENV model is. Yes, the next question, please. Okay. Well, before I move to this, Shyam, just a second. There's somebody who asked me this question on the chat. I'll like to answer that. If you can put it on the slides while I answer that, that will be great, Shyam.
Yes, sir.
How do we? Yeah, it is. How do we bring harmonious thinking as a team of diversified mindset of individuals to design a product? That's the question. Thank you so much for the question. Very, very interesting and intriguing one. And this is a given. In fact, I would say you are blessed. If you have a diversified mindsets of people in your team, this is a blessing in disguise. Why? If you get the same kind of people, let's say, Sukrat, Shyam, Siddharth, and I get together, we all have some kind of, love for technology, or our training is in technology, let's say. Okay, now that may be a good thing, because now we're thinking very, very deeply when it comes to technology. So we'll get everything about technology in a product. But the problem may really not be with technology. It may be something else. Okay, who's going to look at that? Maybe one of these guys can come up with that, but that's just a chance situation. So in fact, I can suggest an alternative, is to try to see how to bring diversification. Your question was, how do you bring harmony? I'm going to try to tell people, and this is never the case, almost never the case that I see. Every time everybody tries to think harmoniously, and in fact we're missing out on a lot of diversification. So I'm going to suggest the opposite of what this question is. Shyam, may I use the whiteboard? I'll just take a moment and use the whiteboard so that I can explain this better. Okay, Shyam, I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm opening my own whiteboard. Thanks, Shyam. Okay, so you just remember this acronym, okay? And I find it very, very useful to see if we have enough diversification in our teams. Okay, the acronym is TEES. Okay, there are other acronyms, there are longer ones, but I like this one. This because it's smaller, like our East acronym. This is TEAS. Okay, what does this mean? This one we already talked about. This is technology. Okay, so just look around your team. Does anybody have technology background? Are they technologically oriented? Are they looking at the technology aspect of the problem also? Okay, so if you have it, good. Check, that one is done. This E is about economics. Okay, so let's put a rupee symbol here, or a euro symbol. Okay, or a dollar. Okay, so some major currencies. Okay, so do we have an economic angle to this whole thing? If not, you should bring that about. Okay, somebody with a keen interest or training in economics background will really help, and that will give you an economics perspective. If not, bring that around. Okay, try to see if you can yourselves can bring that around in your team, or try to see somebody who's trained in that and get them. Okay, so that's the economics. The other E, and an important E, it's all around us, is the environment. Okay, does anybody bring the environmental perspective to the problem? Okay, oftentimes we are missing out on this. This is very important. Majority of the problems and majority of the things that we talk about these days is around the environment. Why? Because lots of discussions have been around technology and economic stuff, but for a long time, this environment stuff was sort of overlooked, gloss, saying, "Oh, we can worry about that later." That later is right now. So we need those experts to bring in environment and people who are experienced in this regard as well. Okay, so technology, economics, and environment. Okay, TEE. What's the last S? Suspense? No. This stands for society. Okay, we live in a human society. We're talking about human centricity, but none of these first three things actually talk about a human being. Okay, this is here our collection of people, society. So, are there any societal trends that we need to be aware of? Are we going nuclear families? Are we going joint family again? Are we, are kids becoming more prominent in the society? Is there a fashionable trend going on there? Is there a responsibility trend there? Okay, so these are some of the most important categories in terms of diversification in your team. There are other acronyms which can help you, but I find this very useful. It covers pretty much 80% of the diversification that you need. Okay, once you okay, now I'm going to try to answer the question that was asked originally, which is how do you bring about how do you bring about harmonious thinking? Now, given this diversification in terms of technology, environment, economics, and societal, how am I going to bring the harmony that I'm seeking? Well, if you focus your sessions one by one, this is how I work, but you can use your style. I would say, okay, guys, let's focus only on technology. Let's see any technical aspects of our user that has not been covered yet. Does our customer go through some technical problems? Okay, can we bring that about? Can we list that? Can that thinking be brought into our product? Okay, then I would switch over to, okay, guys, we are done with technology. Let's move into the economics aspect of it. Are there some things that we have been overlooking? Is it too costly? Is it too cheap? Is it is the price way above the cost? Uh, are there anything else that we need to look at from the economics point of view? Okay. After that, you can ask the question of environment. Is this can this be responsibly disposed of? Is this biodegradable? Such important questions can be asked in the environment section. You can even bring in experts to answer those questions if you don't have that in your midst. And lastly, societal trends. Are there some psychological mindsets that we are overlooking? We think that everybody has 4G connection and 5G connection, but the society is, the average is still, I don't know, 3G, okay, data connection. Then we need to cater that. Maybe in a setup where we are going, there is no network even. How do we handle that? Okay, sort of society leads into technology. So you can see, right? So you can see that we are covering a lot of ground, and that brings harmony. We can bring the harmony that you're seeking. Hopefully that answer helps you in bringing the harmony, Mr. Rakesh.
Yes, sir. It's an excellent answer.
Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, the next question is, Professor says, use empathy to better solve the problem. But my question is, how to figure out the problem? How do we know the real problem? Okay, awesome. So great, thank you so much for that question. There is no real problem. Okay, there are only perspectives. There are only points of view. So to me, which is actually ties into the previous question also that we tried to answer, which is, you know, there are various perspectives to solving a problem. It never is one part of it. Okay. Now we look at each one of these perspectives and bring that perspective into the problem itself. Okay, that will give you a multi-layered approach to a problem, rather than saying it is a problem of this type and just go ahead and solve this, whereas we forget the other stuff, right? So empathy brings a focus on the user, okay, on the customer, that who is going to be the recipient of our service or our product. They're going to be users of the product. That's where the empathy is. We often, as product manufacturers or as service providers, are going to look at only my perspective, the provider's perspective or the manufacturer perspective. Can we go around and see what their perspective looks like? What is a complete novice, user of a product? How are they going to use my product? How am I going to look at that from that perspective? Okay, so that's where the empathy comes in. Now, if that leads you to a better understanding of what the situation is, because they are not going to come and tell you what the real problem is, for sure. This is, we have seen more often than not, customer, just like they say, doctors form poor patients. They say, okay, it may not be true also, but they say, right, customers actually don't come and tell you what the real problem is. Some of them will tell you, but that's just the empathize phase. From then on, you move into analysis. You apply your own point of view, and also this, if you apply the TEES, technology, environment, economics, and society, and see which of these perspectives can we bring into the problem, so that we get a holistic approach to problem solving. Okay, so that will give you, I don't know, quote unquote, real problem. So my opinion is that there is no real problem itself. It is your own perspective that you bring in, and when you compound it, when you add it to others' perspective in your team, and like Mr. Rakesh said, you have a diverse team. Great, you can look at it from various perspectives. How does a 85-year-old look at this? How does a 12-year-old look at this? You can look at this and see the various perspectives of the problem. So the key word here is perspective. I've said it so many times. Perspectives. It's not a problem per se. Okay. However, I would like to add one more, is that in the analysis phase is when we are getting into the root cause, or the root, what is causing all this is going to surface. I guess you're referring to that as the real problem. So that could be one way to look at it, saying, okay, what we are seeing is all the symptoms. Okay, the symptoms of this person, sending wrong emails at the wrong time, or having a lot of typos, or something like that. Those are all symptoms. But what is the root cause is that probably the font size is too small, and there's no easy way to make it bigger for this person. Okay, so that may be the root cause. Is that a real problem? It's a root cause. It causes the other symptoms. Okay, so that's one way to look at it. Okay, again, another perspective. So there may be several other perspectives also. Okay, so that was my trial to respond to this question. If you have any further follow-up questions, or if something that you are referring to is different from what I've attempted to answer, please let us know. Okay. In the meantime, Mr. Rakesh has asked another question. Oh, okay. Before we go on to Mr. Rakesh, yes, Vivek, you have a question? We're not able to hear you, Mr. Vivek. I think.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes. Yes, now we can hear you.
Related to this empathy,
yeah.
So I have one question. Basically, from last 1 year, I am actively going deep into the design thinking. I tried with many of the in my company also. One question which related to empathy, which comes again and again, is how much to empathize. Because my designers, when I tell them, okay, you go into the role of customer and empathize, then they say, okay, sir, I have designed this product or a solution. I know that this is not good for the customer, but still he is asking. And how should I, means you are empathizing with him, understanding and giving the solution.
Okay.
And he is coming back again and again. You give me this, and I am doing it. But when I am solving his problem, I know that this solution is not good for him. When I tell this, he does not accept it. This is one part or conflict when we, as a designer and the customer, coming together, and when they are empathizing with each other. This also struck me when I was discussing with one of my colleagues. She was telling that when I empathize with people, I become too much, and I get into role that I am not able to come out of that role. So that becomes the difficulty also. Means what I'm trying to say is, how much should I empathize, and should I know my limits? Because if you go on empathizing with person, then you may not solve the problem itself. You become a problem for yourself. So I wanted just your clarification or something.
Okay, thank you so much. Very, very interesting. So, as I understand it, the question is that where do I draw the line? Where do I stop saying I have looked at this problem, or do I go keep on interacting with them, trying to find out the problem? Okay, so great question. So let me try to respond to this. I think that when we interact with users, when we interact with customers, okay, now I what I tend to do is the fact that if they're in pain, if they are uncomfortable, or if they're going through a certain situation, um, yes, by all means we need to make some effort into understanding and way, but there is a limit as to how um, uh, to rely on what all they say, okay, because lots of times I find that what we say is not what actually is going underneath for them, okay. So I would record what they say, acknowledge, not empathize, but acknowledge that they've been received and understood, okay. I came across a model called active listening, okay. Active listening is you um, make sure that they get the impression that you are actively you are listening to them, that every word they say you are making a note of it, and that you are really interested and honestly interested in making their lives better, okay. And this is not easy, by the way, I'm telling you it as a model, but when it comes to human interaction, it is not a straightforward you can't just say, okay, spend first 10 minutes doing this, next 10 minutes doing that. No, we cannot have a formula for this. It is about developing a relationship so much so that we can get to know they get to know that you are there with honest intention. Lots of times customers react the way they do because they've had some bad experiences in the past with people like us, right? Who seemingly are trying to help them, but have that. Okay, so there could be other experiences which lead to that. But from our perspective, my thinking is that make a note of it. Try to make an honest attempt at trying to record everything they say. But I don't think you should say that I'm going to solve all your problems. That's a false promise to make. That's not going to stand, because eventually if they still have a problem, they'll come back to you, and they may be wary and may not even come back to you if they have had a bad experience with you as well, okay. So my experience is that uh, try to make a relationship as if they were your friends, and keep a limit on that, okay. So I don't know, from my own experience I can say that uh, try to be as cordial as possible, but draw a limit also on exactly like any other relationship your colleagues, or it's exactly like that. It's no different from that. Empathy is just that our motives are to make our product better also. That's running in the back of our mind. But otherwise it's exactly like how you would either keep pushing another human being, or be on the lookout and say, no, 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 this is my limit, I'm not going to go beyond that, okay. So it's very difficult for me to say that this is the line and don't cross that in empathize. How deep do you go? That's what the original question was, but I can't give you a formulaic answer saying 20 minutes you spend them, come back. No, it is a very, very messy sort of, thing when it comes to relationship between two human beings. I hope I came close to addressing your question. If it's not clear, or if I've gone you are asking this and I've gone this way, please let me know. I would be happy to sort of go on again.
No, thank you, sir. I got the direction. It's very useful.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Vivek. Excellent. That was a very, very interesting question. Okay, Shyam is ready with the next one. Okay, we have another 9 minutes, I guess. Okay, is the gap between our okay, is the gap between our perception and reality be considered as the problem? Well, it is. I don't think it's a problem. it is. It is how we are. As human beings, we all operate on what's called mental models. Okay, so this is something I came across a while back when I was in a team called Knowledge Management, and they told us that what you see what you want to see. Okay, I don't want to get into metaphysics or spirituality, but so it is not a problem. It is how we are. But being aware of where our biases are, and to know that these are all perceptions really helps in the solve part of the design thinking process. Why? Okay, there is credible evidence that people who are self-aware of our own biases, of our own patterns of thinking, tend to be more creative. Okay, that's what they've done a lot of research on finding out accomplished inventors and innovators. They've come to a conclusion that people who are very self-aware. There's a book called Brain at Work. I think that's what the name of the book is. If I'm wrong, I will correct it in the forum. But as far as I remember, it's Your Brain at Work. I forget the name of the author. He talks about the fact that our brain can perceive, but the way things you can really shape it the way you want. Okay, so it's absolute. So in that book, he talks about how accomplished inventors and innovators are highly self-aware individuals. So if you know your own perceptions, your own realities, or you can tease out your own perceptions from quote unquote reality, then that makes you a better problem solver, apparently. Okay, so it turns out that's what neuroscience is indicating at. So by all means, it is not a problem, but it is something to be aware of for our own sake. As good, positive design thinkers who want to make a positive difference in somebody else's life, which is why design thinking exists as a way to make somebody else's life better. We need to be aware that there is a gap between our perception of how things are and how it is, and reality, be considered as a problem. It's not a problem, but know that there is a difference. Okay, that was my trial to answer that question. Okay, the next one is, let's say someone asks to apply design thinking and design an ATM for people who are visually challenged. Is there any framework or process that can help us to think of multiple use cases fast, especially during one-on-one interview? Okay, I guess you got this question in one of your interviews for a job or whatever, and you've asked this. But a important question all the same. I don't know about fast. Design thinking by no means is a fast methodology. You can't, if you are in a hurry, design thinking will not work for you, because it's not a push button solution. It doesn't happen in half an hour flat. No. If time is not on your side, I would say don't look at design thinking, because 4 out of 5 problems are solved without applying any of these constructs or methodologies. Okay, so you can solve any and we as human beings do that, right, on a routine basis. And again, science tells us that 4 out of 5 problems that we come across, you don't need any methodology. We solve it just like that, where something called trial and error. You try this, doesn't work, try one more thing, doesn't work, you try that, something else, it worked. Okay, so like that you'll be able to solve many of the problems. So if you're in a hurry, look somewhere else, trial and error. Okay, but if you're ready to invest time and resources, and if you're able to devote attention to the fate of the users that are going to use your product, then spend time with your target users. And by the way, when we had a workshop in IIT Madras, a couple of people in our workshop interviewed people who are visually challenged, and spend some quality time with them and try to understand situation from their perspective. I would say there's no EAST works very well. Empathize, analyze, solve, and test work. But the empathy part will give you completely new insights that you are unaware of. You think that, let me not take you, the question, the person who asked the question, but let me take my case. I think that I assume so many things about going from one place to another. It may all not be true at all for your target persona here, the visually challenged person, right? So the person who is visually challenged may not have access to many of the things that I take for granted. Okay, that's one of the biggest things. So you will have to sit with them, take a bus ride with them, see what they are doing, how they are, perceiving their world. You may not get 100% answer to this, but it'll be worth your time in trying to figure out what is going on with them. And of course, you can talk to them, and you can get to know what they're going. This team got a fantastic insights from that. Okay, so all those use cases, they worked out from that, and you can get that. So empathy is a lot of time I would spend on, and then you analyze it. Again, what they tell you and what you perceive may not be the ultimate truth, but you analyze and then solve and then test, go through the entire. So if you're pressed for time, if you want to do things fast, look away. Another methodology, not design thinking. But if you have the time, if you have the resource, the driving force to go and make a difference to these people, design thinking is your method. Okay, you can take it and make a big difference to these people. That should be the motive. Human centricity should be the motive for you. Okay, so that was my trial to answer that question. Okay, there's one more. Wow, Sham is not letting me go. There's 2 more minutes, and we have one last question. Is persona related to perception? Also, can experimentation be qualitative in design thinking? Interesting question. These are 2 questions. If I don't manage to answer it within time, I will probably answer this in the discussion forum. Sham, if you're can you be kind enough to post this on the discussion forum? I'll be happy to answer them there itself.
Sure,
but I'll take a quick stab at it in the 1 minute I have. We already answered this about perception, that this is a perception. We all have perceptions, right? Every one of us have perception, or called mental models. We look at the world with a certain view in mind. And so but personas are not based on that. Personas are going to represent people who you interact with, people who you are talking to. Okay, people who you observe. Though it sums up whom we are being talking to, whom we have been empathizing with. Your perception will definitely be mixed in your customer journey map. But that's why we have a team of people. Never do design thinking all by yourself. It's not a good idea, because you will not get multiple perspectives on the same problem. Again, Mr. Rakesh asked a wonderful question in the earlier part of our conversation. So if you have multiple diverse set of people, they'll give you perspectives, and that will help you solve the problem or look at the problem from various perspectives. Okay, absolutely. Last 30 seconds. I think there's a user who has asked about question 11. This has already been answered in the forum. We are not going to use that for your evaluation. Real quick. That's a 30-second answer to it. We have scrapped 11th question for because the options have repeated. I guess that's what it is. Okay. Thank you so much, folks. Thanks so much, Sham, Sukrat, and Siddharth for helping us out, and thanks to the NPTEL for making this possible. If there are any unanswered questions, I will request you to please post this on the discussion forum, and I'll be very, very happy to answer this. Or if you can hold on, we have another session coming up Thursday, live session, and we'll be happy to answer them there. Okay. If you can hold on till another 6 days, we'll answer it there. Okay. So thank you and have a good evening. And if you're watching this as a recording, see you in the next live session. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Hello? Hello?